Sexology, the basis of endocrinology and criminology, book written by Samael on Weor. Part 2. Chapter: The liver. The liver is the biggest gland of the organism. The liver is situated on the right side, exactly below the diaphragm. The liver has a dark red color. The liver weighs 4 pounds, more or less, and is a little less than 9 inches long, 7 inches wide, and 4 inches across through its thickest part. Doctors call the liver the organ of the five. The Kabbalists know that the 5 is the number of Geburah, severity, the law. Many mystics state that Christ is crucified in the liver. There is no doubt that the liver is the seat of appetites and desires. From that point of view, we can really state that we have Christ crucified in the liver. The liver has 5 admirable lobes, 5 groups of wise harmonic tubes, 5 wonderful sanguineous vessels, and 5 basic functions. The number 5 of the liver reminds us of the law, the nemesis that weighs on all those actions that are the offspring of desire and of all evil. On the brass liver found in the ruins of Piacenza were found the engravings of the 12 zodiacal signs. This invites us to think on the 5 of the liver. It is said that the ancient astrologists prognosticated by consulting the liver. They looked at the liver and forecasted. The whole zodiac of the microcosmic human being has its own laws and its signs written in the liver. The lobe of the liver unifies the whole structure of the liver. The lobe of the liver unifies the hepatic functions. When biologists study the hepatic gland, they are able to prove that the wonderful lobe of the liver is something like a small liver in miniature. This is admirable. Whosoever comes to totally know the whole lobe of the liver knows practically the whole liver. The lobe of the liver is a mass of admirable cells united by a wonderful adjoining tissue. Each lobe contains 5 of 6 beautiful and perfect sides. Each lobe possesses its own set of minute and beautiful vessels, its own secreting cells and its own tubes. A group of small hepatic lobes of the liver construct the liver itself. This is the law of 5. The cells of the liver secrete the bile so indispensable for the digestion of fats. The liver produces the glucose so important for the tissues. This work of the transformation of sugar into glucose is an admirable work of alchemy. There are certain internal secretions of the liver that regulate the alchemical transmutation of glucose and of glycogen into sugar. The liver controls the calories of the organism. In its alchemical laboratory, the liver produces the substance called coagulase. Coagulase is an indispensable substance for coagulation. All 5 functions of the liver are fundamental for the life of the organism. The liver is in charge of burning in its alchemical laboratory all the wasted and old cells, forming residues that are easily eliminated. The hepatic artery gives the liver all the blood it needs. The adjoining tissue that enfolds the liver reaches to penetrate inside the organ itself and separate it into its 5 perfect divisions. Each small lobe of the liver is like an island surrounded by a multitude of sanguineous vessels. The portal vein carries venous blood to the liver. This vein inside the liver ramifies into a multitude of vessels. Each small lobe of the liver has its own vein. Each cell of the small lobes of the liver is placed in a net of minute sanguineous vessels. There are also small interlobular veins. Each cell of the small lobes of the liver receives the venous blood proceeding from the stomach, spleen, pancreas and intestines through the famous portal vein that, like a river of pure life, takes nourishment to the liver. The barren islets of the cells of the liver receive their sanguineous nourishment from the small interlobular veins. Nothing is left without life in the liver. Everything receives life. Each cell of the liver is a true alchemical laboratory in charge of wisely transmuting the food into valuable substances for all the cells of the organism. All the transformed blood leaves through the small interlobular veins to pass to the interior of a vessel named the central vein. The central vein drains off into that great abundant river known as the vena cava. The hepatic cells that live inside the liver, like small conscious and intelligent workers, have to transform many substances in the bile to help digestion. The bile remains in the bile duct until it is needed, then it is emptied into the duodenum. The sages of Hindustan see clairvoyantly that from the hepatic gland emerges a lotus flower, the hepatic chakra. Chapter: The suprarenal, adrenal, glands. Adrenaline, epinephrine, is a very important hormone in the human organism. It serves to maintain the tone of the sanguineous vessel walls. The cortex of the suprarenal is intimately related with the development of the sexual glands. There is no doubt about the influence so marked by the suprarenal cortex in relation to sex. The suprarenal cortex influences the development of the glands and above all the characteristics of sexuality. The famous doctor of medicine Paracelsus stated in regards to the kidneys the following: The nature and the exaltation of Venus is found in the kidneys in the grade and predestination that correspond to the planet or the entrails. Well then, since the operation that Venus performs is directed toward the fruits of the earth that must be engendered, the potency of the kidneys concentrates itself on the human fruit. Undoubtedly, Paracelsus was referring to the sexual organs with which Venus will never be able to exhaust the body. He continues: It is natural that the kidneys perform this function, and indeed, no other organ could accomplish it better. Thus, when Venus, for example, receives the great entity, the potency of the conception, the kidneys dry their power of sentiment, sensus, and of the will of man. The doctors of psychoanalysis can prove the former statement that Paracelsus affirmed. The psychoanalysis of Freud has produced a true innovation in the field of medicine. The croakers who have not wanted to accept psychoanalysis are retarded and antiquated. The yogis see 2 chakras in the kidneys, 1 on each kidney. The sages of Hindustan state that the chastity or fornication of a human being is marked in these 2 chakras. This brings to our attention that phrase in the Apocalypse of St. John that states, I am he who searcheth the kidneys, reins, and hearts, and I will give unto every one of you according to your works. Revelation 2 verse 23. The great clairvoyants see 2 lotus flowers, 1 on each kidney. They state that when the human being is a fornicator, these flowers are a bloody red color, and when he is chaste, they are a white color. The adrenal glands are situated in the superior part of the kidneys. These small yellow glands resemble true pyramids. Each adrenal gland has its own cortex and medulla that differ from each other in their structure and function. The hormone of the adrenal cortex controls the sodium and potassium of the blood and the cells. Psychoanalysis has demonstrated that in those instances of fear, pain, anger, etc., the adrenal medulla secretes a larger quantity of adrenaline that prepares all the cells of the organism to face all kinds of emergencies. The dog is an animal that has a very fine sense of smell. When someone is afraid of him, the dog perceives the smell of adrenaline from the adrenal glands of the frightened person, and the dog may try to bite the person. The dog, by his sense of smell, knows who is afraid of him. Excess adrenaline interferes negatively in digestion. Very strong emotions can cause indigestion. Chapter: The spleen. The spleen is a very important organ in the human organism. When the hour of sleep arrives, the soul wrapped in the astral body abandons the physical body and travels in the world of the 5th dimension. Meanwhile, something remains inside the physical body. This something is the ethereal double. The double is the lingam sarira of the sages of Hindustan. Dr. Paracelsus named that ethereal double the mumia. This mumia is a double organism of ethereal matter. This mumia is the vital seat, the vital depth of the physical body, which is absolutely unknown to Western medicine. Yet it is known totally by Asian doctors. The mumia of Paracelsus is a thermoelectromagnetic condensation. The vital body has a fundamental chakra in the spleen. The lotus flower of the spleen specializes the vital currents of the sun. The lotus flower of the spleen attracts the solar vital currents and absorbs them. We see then in the spleen that the white blood cells transmute into red blood cells. The vital energy collected by the splenic chakra passes to the solar plexus and then spreads throughout all the nervous channels of the autonomic system, filling the whole human organism with life. The thyroid gland collaborates in this job with its biological iodine, disinfecting all the channels of the autonomic nervous system. When the soul wrapped in its astral body re-enters the physical body, the body is already repaired. If the conscious being were not to leave the physical body, then his emotions and thoughts would interfere with the reconstruction of his human organism. During the day, many organic refuses are being accumulated in the canals of the autonomic nervous system. This organic refuse impedes the circulation of the vital fluid. Slumber is the outcome of this interference. Thus, during the sleep process, the human organism is reconstructed. A medium in a trance state can project the mumia through the spleen. This mumia is then utilized by some disincarnated entities who enter within it. Afterwards, these entities physically condense or materialize. This is how it has been possible to have seen and touched some people that have been dead. This is not a fantasy, because photographs have been taken of those persons that are already dead. The photographic plates cannot lie. Facts are facts. The famous Dr. Luis Z. Uribe, professor of medicine in the National University of Bogota, was an atheist, materialist, and skeptic 100%. When this man saw, touched, and felt those phantoms that materialized in a laboratory in Naples, he then was transformed radically and became a spiritualist 100%. In a scientific laboratory in Naples, the materializations that were made through the famous medium Eusapia Palladino were studied. Thus, the skeptic scientists saw, heard, photographed, experimented, and believed. Chapter: The Vital Depth. The scientists that place doubt in the existence of ether have no scientific basis for their theories. Indeed, they just play with words, with terms, because instead of the term ether they use the term radioactivity or magnetic field, etc. So, these other terms neither take away from nor give to the reality of ether. In any case, their doubts, analysis, and change of terms will only serve them to study that which is called ether. Most of the time, people fight only for the question of terms of words, etc. Yet, in the final analysis, what counts are the facts, and the facts are facts. With their powerful telescopes, Russian astronomers have discovered worlds in a protoplasmic state. These protoplasmic worlds have come from the ether. We can accept, by simple logical induction, that there are ethereal worlds. Maybe some scientists will not be pleased with the term ethereal. However, the term is of the least importance. The importance is the fact. Before becoming protoplasmic, every world is in an ethereal state. The great Hindustani scientist Rama Prasad stated that everything comes from the ether, and everything returns to the ether. If protoplasm emerges from within the ether, then we have to accept that the ether is in the vital depth of everything that exists. The Asian mystics consider that the ethereal body, vital depth, of the human body has 4 classes of ether. This does not appeal to the Western scientists. Nevertheless, when the Western scientists study the ether, no matter what name they give to it, they then will have to accept by simple analysis and by their own experience the reality of the 4 ethers of the Asian mystics. Thus, the ethereal body of a human being has 4 ethers: chemical ether, ether of life, luminous ether, and reflecting ether. Each one of these ethers has its function in intimate relation with the whole organic economy. The chemical ether is related with all the processes of organic assimilation and nourishment. The ether of life is related with the reproduction processes of the race. The luminous ether is related with the processes of sensory perception. The reflecting ether is intimately related with the faculties of memory, imagination, willpower, etc. The vital body controls the whole motor vessel nervous system and is the seat of life. Each ethereal atom penetrates inside each physical atom and makes it vibrate. If we definitely extract the vital body from the physical body of a person, this person inevitably dies. It is totally absurd to suppose, even for a moment, that chemical physical organisms can survive without the vital body. The very atheistic, materialistic Russians, after having studied the matter profoundly, have become more prudent, acknowledging the vital depth of living matter. The scientists who are exploring the human organism are getting closer to the ethereal body. They will detect it inevitably, and soon they will be able to condense it with some kind of ectoplasm to study it in a laboratory. All the functions of our organism, all the caloric activities, reproduction, combustion, metabolism, etc., have their base in the vital depth. When the vital body weakens, then diseases of the physical body appear. Chapter: The Tattvas and Hormones. Ether exists in an igneous state, tejas. Ether exists in a gaseous, fluidic state as the origin of air, vayu. Ether exists in an aqueous state as the origin of water, apas. Ether exists in a petrious state as the origin of minerals, prithvi. These are the tattvas of the Hindustani. When the tattvas tejas, vayu, apas, and prithvi materialize or condense, we have then the four physical elements, namely, fire, air, water, and earth. Our ethereal, vital, body is formed by the tattvas. The tattvas and the chakras are intimately related. The tattvas enter the chakras and then pass into the interior of the glands of internal secretion. When the tattvas are inside these minute endocrine laboratories, the glands, they intensify the glands' work by transforming themselves into hormones. Thus, the tattvas enter the organism but do not leave it. The tattvas also transform themselves into genes and chromosomes that later on transform themselves into spermatozoids. Everything comes from ether. Everything returns into ether. The ether is the condensation of a substance called akasha. This substance, akasha, is the first radiation of mula prakriti, which is its root or insipid and undifferentiated primordial matter. This mula prakriti is known among the alchemists as the ens seminis, the entity of semen. Akasha is therefore the igneous radiation of the primordial matter. Akasha is contained within the semen. The alchemists state that water, semen, is the habitat of fire, akasha. Akasha is therefore the kundalini of the Hindustani. In the books of Genesis, from all religious literature, the primordial matter, mula prakriti, is represented by the waters. In the beginning, the protoplasm of any nebula is ethereal. If we look further, we have to accept that behind each effect there is a cause. Therefore, the ether itself has to have a cause. We have learned from the yogis of Hindustan that the cause of ether is akasha. The Asian sages state that akasha is a sea of fire. This superastral fire is contained within the ens seminis, the mula prakriti of the sages of India. The seed atoms of any known matter are the ens seminis. Akasha is superastral fire. Sounds condense through the mediation of akasha. The kundalini serpent is fire and sound. Therefore, no one could incarnate the Word, Christ, without previously raising the sacred serpent, because it is impossible to concrete and materialize sound without akasha. The prana vayus are sounding waves of akasha. These sounding waves condense themselves in the tattvas of the ether. The tattvas materialize themselves in the four elements of nature: fire, air, water, and earth. In conclusion, the chemical physical world is the outcome of the materialization of sound. The chemical physical world is condensed sound. We do not accept an anthropomorphic and dogmatic God, but scientifically, we accept sound as a causa causorum of the universe. Furthermore, there has to be a cause for the pre-cosmic sounds. The great Asian sages tell us of a solar logos. Dr. Krumheller stated that the logos sounds. Indeed, the logos is the Word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehend it not. John 1 verses 1-5. The logos is not an individual. The logos is an army of ineffable beings. Chapter: The prostate. This very important gland, the prostate, is very small. Every man and male of the mammal species has one. Examining very carefully, we can see that this wonderful gland is situated exactly at the neck of the bladder. Modern science still does not totally know all the functions of the prostate. The prostate secretes a white and viscous liquid. The sages of medicine know that in women, the urethra measures only 35 millimeters and is very dilatable. In man, it has been proven to be 20 to 27 centimeters in length. The wizard doctors from Egypt, Greece, Samothrace, Troy, India, etc., always gave a lot of importance to the prostate. Swami Sivananda, great yogi doctor of India, states that the lotus of the prostate has 6 petals. Many beings live in the ultra of nature, in the 4th dimension, with their solar astral bodies. The Asian sages state that they have cognizance of those beings thanks to their prostatic or uterine chakra. These great Hindustani sages concentrate daily on their prostatic chakra. They imagine that their chakra rotates from left to right, like a magnetic wheel, while vocalizing the letter M with the lips closed. The letter M sounds as if imitating the bellowing of a bull, but without that deepness of voice. This is a profound and vibrating sound. This practice will awaken the prostatic/uterine chakra if it is practiced daily through many years. When the prostatic/uterine chakra enters into activity, it grants us the power to leave the physical body, to move in the astral body. This is how we are able to move in the astral body independent of physical matter. In the astral body, the human being can investigate for himself the great mysteries of life and death. The prostatic/uterine chakra grants us the power of astrally projecting the personality. The peyote is a Mexican cactus that produces the projection of the human personality. With the peyote, any human being can project himself in the astral body consciously. This cactus plant does not have thorns but flowers of a whitish, pink color, and its fruits of a light pink color. The ancient Aztecs worshipped the peyote as a sacred plant. The epidermis of this cactus is very smooth and it has from 5 to 12 sides that separate among themselves by beautiful lines of fine hairs. The technical name of peyote is Anhelonium williamsil. The peyote that is useful for the projection of the personality is not found in the capital of Mexico nor in the whole state of Mexico. Whosoever wants to find legitimate peyote would have to look for it in Chihuahua among the Taumara Indians or in San Luis Potosí in northern Mexico. The plant must be chewed. This plant must be ripe and fresh. It is useless if it is dried. In the moment of chewing the cactus, the disciple must be concentrated on his innermost, that is to say, on his own internal being. One must, in this moment, assume a mystical attitude. Let us remember that our internal being is God Himself. In those moments, while chewing the peyote, we must fall asleep concentrating on our internal God. The exact outcome will be astral projection. Then we will travel in the astral body. This is how we will be able to see, hear, and touch the things of the ultra of nature. The things seen by the peyote are not hallucinations, as ignorant people believe. The intellectuals know that there is a 4th dimension. Any educated person knows this. The author later wrote, "We do not recommend the use of this marvelous cactus, which makes the astral body separate itself from the physical body and preserves the lucidity of consciousness while acting in the astral world. Indeed, what we recommend is practice, much practice, of other techniques of astral projection, and soon you will act and travel within the astral body." Samael Weor, Aztec Christic Magic. Science has demonstrated that the perception of our 5 senses is very limited. Beneath the color red is found the gamma of the infrared, above the color violet is found the gamma of the ultraviolet. Science does not ignore this. The loss of elasticity in the crystalline lens of the eye prevents the image from forming in the retina. This is what is called bad focusing. In reality, no one perceives the object in itself, but merely the image of the object. Short-sightedness prevents us from seeing the image of a faraway object. There is also daltonism. The inflammation of the retina causes daltonism. This is the confusion of colors. In conclusion, the human eye only perceives sensory images. That is all. However, there are ultrasensory images in the ultra, and senses conditioned to receive those images. Those senses enter into activity with the peyote. This is how we can perceive the images of the ultra. Therefore, if those images of the ultra were hallucinations, as the ignorant people say, then the sensory images that form in the retina would also be hallucinations. We need to let go of 18th century materialism. We need to be more analytic, less dogmatic, and more didactic. Matter is condensed energy. Energy condenses into different states. Factually, there are masses whose grade of energetic vibration is so fast that their sensory images escape the perception of our five senses. Likewise, there are masses whose grade of vibration is so slow that they submerge beneath the limits of our sensory perception. There are physical masses that the human being is normally incapable of perceiving above and below the limits of our external sensory perception. Only with the powers of our astral body can we perceive other dimensions of the universe and life. The peyote has the power to put into activity, even if it is momentary, those wonderful faculties that allow us to investigate the fourth dimension of nature. Many people might state that they do not believe. However, this is not a subject matter to believe or not to believe. These are scientific matters that need logical analysis and scientific investigation, free of prejudices and fanaticism. It needs experimentation. One must profoundly explore all the recondite parts of the human being. We must not confine ourselves inside intransigent scientific dogmas. We need to be more liberal in our analysis. Materialism has already failed in Soviet Russia. The failure of materialism is proven by the fact that there are 15 million Muslims in Russia. The perceptions of the ultra are as natural as the perceptions of the five ordinary senses. They are not hallucinated deliriums, as ignorant people believe. This is not about convulsive pathologic suggestions from ignorant, fanatic, hallucinated people. We need more study and less pride. The perceptions of the ultra exist and must be studied. The uncivilized natives in the Republic of Haiti who practice voodoo can be criticized because of their practices of black magic and because of their lack of intellectual culture. Yet indeed, we do not have the scientific basis of any kind to judge, with all logical preciseness, their hypersensory perceptions. We do not deny that in many psychics there are psychic paroxysms accompanied by convulsions, Pythonism with all its manifestations, etc., etc. The Pythonic crisis, the so-called crisis of Loa of the Haitians, the ecstatic convulsive crises during which they have supersensory perception, are in depth absolutely unknown to science and forensic psychiatry. If we put aside our intellectual pride, we will arrive at the conclusion that we can analyze sensory phenomena, objective states of the human organism. However, conventional science still has no authority in order to judge, in a total form, the perceptions of the ultra. With no doubt, fanaticism is the worst enemy of reasoning and logic. However, people from universities also fall into fanaticism. When people from universities laugh at clairvoyance and at convulsive ecstatic crises, when we believe that all the visions seen during one of those crises are hallucinations, madness, etc., by dint of pride, we fall into the state of fanaticism and ignorance. Our fanaticism is hallucinated by the theories that we have read and by the intellectual principles with which we mold our intellect. If we believe that others are ignorant, likewise they may categorize us as ignorant, even if we believe that we are very cultured. We are not the masters of knowledge. Therefore, convulsive and pathologic intellectual suggestion can convert an intellectual into an intolerable fanatic. Many natives of Haiti who practice voodoo perceive with their clairvoyance tremendous realities of the ultra of nature. In order to discuss something, it is necessary to know about it. Therefore, the opinion of a critic has no value whatsoever if he has not a complete knowledge of the subject matter. People from universities do not practice voodoo, they do not know it. Therefore, they do not have a complete knowledge of the subject matter. People from universities see the natives of Haiti in their Pythonismic crisis. Yet, they do not know anything about the things those natives see in their trances, because people from universities have not gone through those famous Pythonic crises. The only thing they can do is to launch opinions without basis, because they have no complete knowledge of the case. The prostatic/uterine chakra grants every human being the power to project himself into the astral body consciously. The important thing is to develop this chakra. We repeat, This is not a subject matter to believe or not to believe. The important thing is to study, analyze, and experience. When any intellectual person states, "I do not believe in that," they are demonstrating that they are superstitious. A cultured, studious, and investigative person states, "I will study it. I will experience it. I will analyze it." Chapter: The testicles and the ovaries. The internal secretions of the testicles and the ovaries are definitive for the life of the human being on the earth. The fundamental differences between men and women are due to the secretions of the testicles and the ovaries. Only one spermatozoon and one ovum are necessary for the reproduction of the human species. That is all. Therefore, scientifically, we do not see the reason why the male enjoys spilling millions of spermatozoa, when indeed only one is needed to fecundate. The egg is big, round, and possesses its own nucleus with a thick protoplasm that has an aspect of a yolk. The spermatozoon is different. It is long and slim, has a pointed and oval body where the fundamental nucleus is found. The spermatozoon has a long tail resembling a tadpole. The movement of the feminine egg within the waters of life is slow. The feminine egg waits patiently for the masculine spermatozoon to find it. The male spermatozoon, propelling itself with its fish tail within the waters of the sexual chaos, navigates very far in search of the egg that awaits it. The biologists do not know with scientific exactitude the causa causorum that unites the spermatozoon to the egg. For science, this is an enigma. As in everything, scientists launch hypotheses which are more or less their scientific opinions. Thus, it is believed that the protoplasm of the egg possesses a great chemical attraction to the sperm, etc. All these are hypotheses, but nothing more than hypotheses. Even if this hypothesis were to be true, it would still not resolve the enigma. We cannot logically admit that a chemical reaction can be performed by itself without a conscious, controlling principle. From the protoplasm of the egg, we will go on to the energetics of the egg. Logic invites us to accept energy as a magnetic field of attraction to the egg. Logic invites us to accept electricity as a dynamic force impelling the spermatozoon to the egg. In the final synthesis, the atom is an exponent of energies. The electromagnetic forces of every protoplasm are a tremendous reality. Everything radiates. We admit the mechanics of the phenomena, yet we need an explanation of the laws that regulate such mechanics. Indeed, the cosmic consciousness is the primary intelligence that establishes the union of the spermatozoon with the ovum. We cannot accept an intelligent phenomenon without an intelligent cause. Facts are facts, and before the facts we must surrender. Gnostics talk about the third logos. Science must know that the third logos is that primary intelligence. The third logos is not an individual. The third logos of the Gnostics is the primary intelligence of nature. The creative energy of the third logos is that primary intelligence of nature that unites the spermatozoon with the ovum. The creative energy of the third logos bipolarizes itself into positive and negative. The spermatozoon is the exponent of the positive forces of the third logos. The ovum is the exponent of the negative forces of the third logos. Both poles of the energies unite in order to create. The law is the law. The decapitation of John the Baptist occurs when the spermatozoon enters the ovum. The materialist partisans of Darwinism point out the similarities of all animals in the embryonic state, including the human being. This they do in order to prove that the more complex and superior species have emerged by evolution and transformation from the more simple and inferior species. Nonetheless, we, the Gnostics, consider that the similarities of the animals in their embryonic state, including the human being, are revealing to satiety two things: first, the unity of life; second, an original genetic seed. The seed of all that exists sleeps as an original seed within the seminal atoms of the grand universal life. The creative energy of the third logos makes the waters of life, the universal semen, become fecund. This is how the germs of every existence sprout. Every species has a universal prototype within the original chaos. In the famous blastoderm, there are 3 layers of absolutely different cells. The first one is the internal, the second one is middle, and the third one is the external. The spermatozoon united with the ovum multiplies by cellular division. This is how that cellular community called the blastoderm is created. The gelatinous state of the spermatozoon and the ovum demonstrate that in the beginning of the universe, life was subtle, fluidic and gelatinous, and afterwards more gross and hard. This reminds us of the great turtle worshipped by the Mayan Indians. First, it is subtle and gelatinous, afterwards its hard shell full of constellations and worlds appears. As above, so below. Fortunately, the scientists in Russia have discovered worlds in a protoplasmic state. The spermatozoon and the ovum must pass through a process of evolution and development before becoming a new vehicle for the human soul. The internal causes for the maturation of the ovum sperm are very unknown to biology. The intimate causes for the maturation of a universe in a protoplasmic state are an enigma to astronomy and astrophysics. It would be very interesting if the scientists would resolve the enigma of the chromosomes. Why does the egg have only 48 chromosomes? Why does the spermatozoon also have 48 chromosomes? Enigmas. 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 Modern science has so far only found 46. There are 2 more related to the vital body, the subtle aspect of the physical body, 4th dimension. What is the intimate reason for the spermatozoon and the ovum losing, during their maturation, the same exact mathematical number of 24 chromosomes each? Who is the one who endures the inconvenience of making such a perfect mathematical calculation? When a spermatozoon unites with an ovum after their maturation, for what reasons do they together come to have the same original number of 48 chromosomes? There are 2 mathematical operations in this, namely, subtraction and addition. The basic capital is 48. Can there be mathematical operations without a mathematical intelligence? All of this is showing us through simple logical deduction the reality of the primary intelligence of nature that we, the Gnostics, call the third logos. After the human spermatozoon has fecundated the human ovum, the uterus gestates for 9 months. The cell of the ovum and sperm has 2 nuclei, one from the sperm and the other from the ovum. These 2 nuclei join themselves wisely. The protoplasm of these nuclei mix together. There is a sphere of attraction inside the ovum sperm cell. The great sphere of attraction also bipolarizes, obeying the primary intelligence. Each of the 2 polarities of that sphere of attraction contract and expand the nucleus, converting it into the mitotic spindle. The chromosomes and genes are mixed in the center of the nuclei mitotic spindle. The genes are inside the chromosomes. The genes give us the heredity of our father and mother. Nevertheless, not everything that the human being receives is hereditary. Terrible murderers have been born from virtuous families, and great geniuses have been born from mediocre families. If a clairvoyant examines an already mature spermatozoon when it directs itself into the ovum, then the clairvoyant will see in the superior vortex of the spermatozoon a very important atom. This is the seed atom. This atom is a trio of matter, energy, and consciousness. A very fine thread, united to a certain sum of energetic values of nature, comes from that atom. Those values are related to the soul, to the being. Within space, we are points who accede to serve as vehicles of determined sums of values from nature. Therefore, death is just a subtraction of fractions. Once the subtraction is done, death, only those values remain. Those values of nature are electromagnetic. Once the physical body is dead, those values rebuild another one through new biological processes, whose steps are followed very carefully by biology. This is the law of reincorporation. The law is the law, and the law is fulfilled. There is energy inside the physical atoms of the ovum sperm. This energy forms the mumia. The atoms of the astral body abide inside each atom of the mumia. We know Theosophy's septuple constitution of the human being. However, here we are just synthesizing. We are not setting down dogmas. We are analyzing. Science has already been capable of the materialization of the astral body in some laboratories. Facts are facts, and before the facts we must surrender. The virtues and defects of every human being depend upon the quality of values that reincarnate in them. For instance, a dervish Moor who lived in Spain during the era of the Moorish dominion over Spain studied the Quran. He read the Quran and studied the Bible. The outcome was that the knowledge ingested in him, and he became full of skepticism. That dervish Moor died full of doubts. At a later date, the values from that dervish Moor reincorporated and became a man named Voltaire. Any human being can develop clairvoyance and see the values of the consciousness evolving throughout space-time. The great American physiologist Brown Sequard, mentioned by Dr. Crumheller, invented a system of healing that was judged by many people as immoral. This system consists of exciting the sexual organ without reaching the orgasm and the spilling of the semen, the seed, whether male or female. In this case, the semen is cerebrated and the cerebrum is semenized. Thus the semen is assimilated inside the organism and the nervous system nourishes and fortifies itself totally. This system would not be an obstacle for the reproduction of the species. A spermatozoon can easily escape from the organism without the necessity of spilling the millions of spermatozoa that are lost in a seminal ejaculation. The system of Brown Sequard is known in Italy as carezza. This is the arcanum AZF. Dr. Crumheller stated that impotence can be cured with this system. On page 174 of Rosicrucian novel, Dr. Crumheller states the following. The Rosicrucian studies teach us that the semen is the astral liquid of the human being. It is life. It encloses power. Yet, it is so immense a power that knowing how to drive it, one can achieve everything. This is why it is so important to know the Rosicrucian secrets, because one possesses a powerful weapon against the adversities of destiny. On page 172 of the same novel, Dr. Crumheller states the following. The Rosicrucian magician feels the same nervous arousing as any human being full of desire. If men would know what they are capable of doing during this moment of nervousness, I am sure they would do anything but to follow the woman. The Aztec sages of ancient Mexico knew very well what can be done in that moment of nervousness. Men and women were naked on the stone patios of the Aztec temples. For months they loved one another there, uniting sexually. Those couples knew how to withdraw from the sexual act before the orgasm. This is how they avoided the ejaculation of their semen. These couples did not allow the wonderful semen to escape out of their organism. This is the famous Italian carezza, the system of the great American Brown Sequard. The awakening of the Kundalini is achieved with Brown Sequard's system. Indeed, surgeons will not be able to find the Kundalini with the surgical scalpel. Yet, if they were to practice the Gnostic Rosicrucian exercises, then they would become clairvoyant. Any clairvoyant doctor can see the Kundalini. The Kundalini is the Aztec serpent Quetzalcoatl, that is, the fire of the Holy Spirit, the igneous serpent of our magical powers. The clairvoyant yogi sees a lotus flower with 4 wonderful petals situated exactly between the sexual organs and the anus. This lotus flower with 4 wonderful petals is the Church of Ephesus, the Muladhara chakra. The Kundalini is found inside this chakra. The Kundalini has the shape of a sacred serpent. It is a solar spiritual, fiery serpent that can only be seen with clairvoyance. It cannot be found with the surgical scalpel because it is not material. The Kundalini is concentrated Akasha. Akasha is the cause of ether and the agency of sound. Only those who raise the Akashic serpent through the canalis centralis of the spinal medulla can incarnate the word. The Kundalini develops, evolves, and progresses inside the aura of the solar logos. The chakra of the sexual organs is the center of the Prithvi Tattva, the Petrus ether. Whosoever controls the Prithvi Tattva can control earthquakes. There are 7 magnetic centers within the spinal medulla. These 7 centers of the spinal medulla are connected with the 7 important plexuses of the autonomic nervous system. All the tattvic powers are within those 7 centers. The flaming Akasha opens those 7 tattvic centers of the spinal medulla. This is how we become masters of the tattvas. 1. The first magnetic center of the spinal medulla is the abode of the Tattva Prithvi, the power of sex. 2. The second one corresponds to the prostatic/uterine chakra. This is the church of the Tattva Apis, water, liquid ether. 3. The third chakra is at the height of the navel. It is related to the solar plexus. This is the church of the Tattva Tejas, igneous ether, universal fire. 4. The fourth center of the spinal medulla corresponds to the chakra of the heart. This is the sacred abode of the Tattva Vayu, gaseous ether. These are the four inferior tattvic centers of the human temple. The tower of the temple is the neck and the head. The following three superior tattvic centers are in this human tower. 5. The fifth center is the larynx. This is the church of the word. Sound cannot exist without akasha. The kundalini becomes creative with the word. 6. The sixth magnetic center is related with the frontal chakra. This is the center of clairvoyance. When the kundalini opens this center, the human being becomes clairvoyant. This is how one can see the ultra. 7. The seventh tattvic center is the chakra of the 1,000 petals situated in the pineal gland. When the kundalini opens this chakra, we receive polyvoyance, omniscience, etc. We receive all these powers with the system of brown sequard. The only requisite is never to spill the semen during our whole life. Brown sequard system is the Arcanum AZF. The famous North American Kabbalist Manly P. Hall, mentioned by the Dr. Francis A. Propato, states in his book Occult Anatomy the following. Those who are incapable of raising the fire of the spinal medulla through their Sushumna channel will be cast down into a lateral kingdom similar to that of today's apes, monkeys, gorillas, etc. The Sushumna channel runs lengthwise and inwards within the medullar canal. The Arcanum AZF must only be practiced between husband and wife in legitimately constituted homes. Those men who practice the Arcanum AZF with many women commit the serious crime of adultery. The adulterous man will never achieve the awakening of the kundalini and the tattvic powers. Likewise, the same will happen with women, the adulterous woman who practices the Arcanum AZF with many men will never awaken the kundalini or the tattvic powers. The Gnostic initiates who adulterate lose their powers. God is the innermost. God is the inner being of each human being who comes to the world. God is a divine hermaphrodite, male-female. God does not need a spouse to light the fire. Yet, the human being is not God. Human beings cannot light their fires without a spouse. The human being needs a spouse to enlighten the fires, because the human being is not God. The human being must put aside the pride of believing that he is a god, because the human being is nothing more than a miserable slug that wallows in the mud of the earth. The great female yogi Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, after becoming the widow of the Count Blavatsky, had to remarry with Colonel Olcott in order to awaken her kundalini and achieve the tattvic powers. The Sacred Order of Tibet teaches their disciples the Arcanum AZF. In the mysteries of Egypt, the Arcanum AZF was taught to the initiates, and those who would divulge this great arcanum were condemned to death. They were taken to a patio, and there, against a wall, they were decapitated. Their hearts were stripped away and their ashes were thrown to the four winds. On the patios of the temple of the Aztecs, naked men and women participated in the Arcanum AZF for entire months. Whosoever ejaculated the semen, by any chance, was condemned to death for profaning the temple. Afterwards, he was decapitated. The initiates from the schools of mystery of all times received initiations with the great arcanum. There was never known within any school of mystery someone who had achieved initiation without the great arcanum AZF. This is the great arcanum. Once on a given occasion, after having dictated a lecture, we were asked by a bachelor disciple if it were possible to practice the great arcanum with a woman of the astral world. We answered him that only with a woman of flesh and blood is it possible to awaken kundalini. Another brother who was also a bachelor wanted to practice with imaginary women. This is very ominous. When the mind creates a mental effigy, this effigy acquires consciousness and converts itself into a tempting demon of the mental world. During sleep, this effigy sexually discharges us through nocturnal pollutions, wet dreams. It is very difficult for a student to disintegrate those mental effigies. Commonly, the students become victims of those mental effigies that their own mind invented. The best is to find a spouse that will really cooperate in the grand opus. Those who do not have a spouse must raise their creative energy with sports in the open air, like hiking excursions and swimming. They must raise their creative energy when listening to good music and when admiring the great works of art, sculpture, painting, classical music, etc. In this way, the unmarried ones can raise their sexual energies and bring them up toward their hearts. There in that center of life those creative forces mix themselves with the luminous waves of the internal Christ and are taken toward the ineffable regions of the great light. We also elevate the sexual energies with the aesthetic sense, with charity and love. Nevertheless, in the name of truth, we must affirm the following. If you want higher initiation, if you long for the awakening of the Kundalini and the Tattvic powers, you need to find a spouse, because the initiate without a spouse is like a garden without water. Many mystical initiates believe that they are chaste because they do not have a spouse. Nevertheless, they have nocturnal pollutions. This is how they miserably lose their Christic semen, within which is found the genesis of the great life. The sacred fire of the solar logos, Christ, is found within every seed, whether it is vegetable, animal, or human seed. This is why the seed has the power to reproduce itself. Human beings must take care of their semen, their seed, as if it was potable gold. We heroically extract the sacred fire of the Kundalini from our seed through the Arcanum AZF. Nocturnal pollutions are radically healed with the Arcanum AZF. We are children of a man and a woman. We are not children of any theory. The Word, the Son of Man, is the child of a man and a woman. The Son of Man is the child of immaculate conceptions. We need to lift up the Son of Man inside us, and in order to lift up the Son of Man inside us we need a spouse. Different types of clairvoyant perception. Clairvoyance, perception of non-physical imagery. Inferior forms include hallucinations, dreams, daydreaming, fantasy, memory, etc. Superior forms provide perception of other dimensions, free of the limitations of physical space-time. Another word for clairvoyance is imagination. There are 5 fundamental types of clairvoyant perceptions. 1. Conscious clairvoyance. 2. Unconscious clairvoyance. 3. Infraconscious clairvoyance. 4. Subconscious clairvoyance. 5. Superconscious clairvoyance. These 5 types of clairvoyant perceptions produce different forms of mental reactions. Forensic psychiatry. 1. There are different biotypological characters. Diagnostically speaking, when impacted by clairvoyant perceptions, each personality reacts in accordance to their particular, individual psychopathology. There is the apparently normal paranoid, and the sick paranoid. 2. There also is the schizophrenic 3 with violent, instantaneous, and terrible reactions. There also is the neurasthenic 4 with an sick, double personality, the assassin and vulgar oligophrenic 5. The epileptic, the hypersensory type of schizoid 6 or hyperesthetic with epileptic genotype, etc. During the moment of a conditional reaction, every clairvoyant speaks and acts conditioned by the type of psychopathological personality that characterizes him as a human entity. For the development of clairvoyance, it is necessary to possess an intellectual culture. 7. To have an intellectual discipline is necessary for the development of the latent powers, chakras, discs, magnetic wheels of the astral body. A clairvoyant without any intellectual culture and without any intellectual discipline degenerates into a delinquent and vulgar person. A clairvoyant without any intellectual culture can fall into the following crimes: calumny, public or private slander, defamation of honor, threats, uxoricide, homicide, suicide, patricide, fratricide, incest, theft, matricide, kidnapping, ambush, sexual seduction, violence and force, infanticide, etc., and many other cases of crime studied by psychiatry and psychology. The pathogenic role of superstitious fear induced by the infraconscious, subconscious, or unconscious clairvoyant perceptions give origin to murder, calumny, and public slander, and in general to all kinds of common crimes. The infraconscious, subconscious, or unconscious clairvoyant perceptions produce different situational reactions in accordance with the biotypological type of clairvoyant. The different types of clairvoyance, namely the neurasthenic, schizophrenic, oligophrenic, epileptic, and hypersensory class of schizoid, fall into states of psychopathic consternation, compulsive and pathological suggestion, superstitious delirium of persecution, etc. All of these take them into the abyss of delinquency. Therefore, before delivering ourselves to the development of esoteric powers, we need to study ourselves and make a personological, psychopathological diagnosis of our personality. Point 8. After discovering our own particular psychobiotypological I, we need to reform ourselves with an intellectual culture. We need an educational psychotherapy. 9. In order to reform ourselves. Indeed, the 4 Gospels of Jesus Christ are the best educational psychotherapy. It is necessary to totally study and practice all the teachings contained in the 4 Gospels of Jesus Christ. Therefore, only after reforming ourselves morally can we deliver ourselves to the development of the chakra discs, magnetic wheels, of the astral body. It is also urgent to study the best authors of theosophy, 10 Rosicrucianism, 11 psychology, yoga, etc. Chapter: The Consciousness. Only those who have achieved awakening in the superior worlds possess conscious clairvoyance. During the normal hours of sleep, all human beings live in the suprasensory worlds wrapped in their astral bodies. During sleep and after death, humanity lives in the suprasensory regions of the great Mother Nature. Unfortunately, while in the suprasensory worlds, people act with their consciousness asleep. Positive clairvoyance is possessed only by souls who live awakened in the suprasensory worlds. Indeed, those who possess continuous consciousness, whether out of their body when it is asleep or inside it when it is awake, are always in the state of watchfulness. They are positive clairvoyants. They possess continuous consciousness. Every authentic extrasensory or esoteric investigation begins from that perfect state of surveillance. It is necessary for the dreamer to awaken within the internal worlds before converting himself into a competent investigator in the superior worlds. The mediums of spiritism or spiritualism are incompetent to investigate in the superior worlds, because they have their mental body dislocated. The mediums of spiritualism are mentally unbalanced, therefore, any investigation they attempt to do in the superior worlds results in failure. The psychopathic states of the mediums of spiritualism, the compulsive and pathologic suggestions, the paroxysmal epileptic states during their trance, and the psychic obsession to which they are exposed, convert them into fallacious, abnormal, and mentally unbalanced individuals. Logical thought and exact concepts are necessary in order to investigate in the superior worlds. Every true, positive vision must be totally supported by concrete facts of the physical world. The truth does not diverge from human nature. Therefore, if what we consider true diverges from human nature, then it cannot be true. If the clairvoyant is not a saint, then at least one must be a perfect gentleman or lady. We know of the case of a paranoid clairvoyant who slandered a virtuous mother, accusing her publicly and pointing her out as an adulterer and a witch, etc. This poor innocent and virtuous woman was mocked publicly by the paranoid clairvoyant. We also know another case where the clairvoyant was a neurasthenic. He slandered and threatened a virtuous and honorable citizen to death, accusing him of being a warlock and asseverating that he was endowed with diabolic powers. We know about a schizophrenic clairvoyant who reacted instantaneously against an honorable citizen. The schizophrenic clairvoyant accused that man of having an affair with the clairvoyant's wife. The schizophrenic clairvoyant said that he saw this with the use of his clairvoyance. If this clairvoyant had been a neurasthenic, he would have murdered that gentleman. If he had been paranoid, he would have studied and planned a perfect murder. If he had been an oligophrenic, he would have killed the man by starving him or by shooting him, even though the victim had never thought of having an affair with the clairvoyant's wife. If the clairvoyant had declared his accusation in front of the judges, they would have declared the other man innocent because of the lack of evidence, since in order to sentence someone it is necessary to prove the corpus delicti, the responsibility of the accused. The majority of clairvoyants could be prosecuted for slander, threats, and defamation of character. Another aspect that one must take into account is the evidence of the corpus delicti. If the corpus delicti is not demonstrated in any of the established forms and penal code proceedings, then the accused is innocent. Therefore all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them? Matthew 7 verse 12. The truth does not diverge from human nature. Therefore, if what we consider true diverges from human nature, then it cannot be true. Christ said, "Judge not, that ye be not judged. For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged, and with what measure ye mete, it shall be measured to you again." Matthew 7 verses 1 and 2. The clairvoyant must be rigorously analytic, highly intellectual, and strictly scientific. The clairvoyant's worst enemy is ignorance. The clairvoyant must learn to see in the absence of the I, the myself. The clairvoyant must see without judging. Chapter: The Psychobiotypic I. The mind is bottled up within the I. Every conditional reaction of the mind is the outcome of the psychobiotypic I. Every perception passes from the senses into the mind. The I translates all the information collected by the mind in accordance with its prejudices, desires, fears, remembrances, preconceptions, maliciousness of a certain type, fanaticism, hatred, envy, jealousy, passion, etc. The clairvoyant always has a bad secretary from whom he needs to liberate himself. This secretary is the I, the myself, the ego. The eye of the clairvoyant traps all supersensory representations that arrive into his mind, then he interprets them in accordance with his prejudices, hatreds, jealousies, mistrusts, maliciousness of a certain type, passions, remembrances, pride, envy, arrogance, etc. The subsequent reactions of the clairvoyant are the outcome of his own psychobiotypic I. The paranoid clairvoyant is full of pride. He likes to keep himself isolated from the world. He prefers to deal only with very few people. He is a very intelligent person, yet he is sly and distrustful. He tends to believe himself to be infallible. He believes himself to be a great master. He believes that he can dominate the world. He does not accept opinions from anyone, since he believes that only he is truly wise, great, and powerful. When this type of paranoid clairvoyant reacts with hatred, malice, distrust, etc., he can even, in cold blood, plan an intellectual assassination. The neurasthenic clairvoyant has a double personality. Just as he prays and preaches ineffable things, he also speaks of pistols, daggers, war, violence, etc. When facing an unpleasant representation, this type of clairvoyant reacts with calumnies, insults, homicides, etc. When one of his two personalities becomes full of complexes or humiliation, he then asks for forgiveness and speaks with devotion in order to make amends. Once he attains his purposes, his other personality reacts with pride, anger, arrogance, violence, treason, etc. An in-depth analysis upon this double personality type takes us to the conclusion that Judas Iscariot represents a type of neurasthenic clairvoyant. Judas represents a double personality, since in one moment he was following the master and in another he was against the master. He kissed the master, and thereafter betrayed him. He repented of his act, and thereafter committed suicide. This is how the neurasthenic type is. The I, the myself, does not exist within Christ. Christ does not react against calumnies, slaps, mockeries, threats, whippings, etc. Christ overwhelms because of his terrific serenity. When crucified, Christ said only, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." The I does not exist inside the Christ. This is why he neither reacts nor judges anybody. Christ is a perfect clairvoyant who knows how to see with comprehension, without judging, without translating, because he does not have the I. Christ is the clairvoyant who sees, comprehends, and knows. Christ is the universal spirit of life incarnated inside Jesus of Nazareth. The clairvoyant needs to learn how to contemplate internal representations in the absence of the eye. The clairvoyant needs to see without judging, without translating, without preconcepts, without fanaticism, without passion, etc. The clairvoyant needs to be highly comprehensive. When a schizophrenic clairvoyant reacts against an unpleasant representation, he can fall into the worst crimes because of his violent, instantaneous, and terrible reactions. Commonly, a schizoaffective clairvoyant is woeful, melancholic, auto-concentrated, and introspective. He possesses melancholic ideas, he gets weary with any intellectual work, etc. The schizoid clairvoyant, when facing an unpleasant representation, if he is not rigorously analytic, can react by murdering others and thereafter committing suicide. A masochist clairvoyant enjoys whipping himself while in the presence of his mystical representations or performing terrible penances to the death. Clairvoyance demands logical thought and an exact concept. One needs to have perfect mental equilibrium in order to be an exerted clairvoyant. A clairvoyant with some psychic trauma can suffer serious mental disorders and can unconsciously create fatal images in the mental world. When a mentally disordered clairvoyant contemplates his own suprasensory creations, he can then receive a nervous, emotional shock. He can also receive a vertiginous impetus, or an unexpected and acute emotional rapture. All of these can certainly take this clairvoyant into the abyss of crime. Psychic trauma is the outcome of great moral pain, or a great frightening experience, or the loss of a beloved one, etc. The sadomasochist clairvoyant has reached such a state of sexual perversion that he is easily converted into a mystic erotic assassin. The sadomasochist clairvoyant loves sweet evilness and falls into the bloodiest phallic cults. The black masses of the Middle Ages with their naked women upon the altar and the assassination of innocent children are living examples of this tenebrous and fatal kind of clairvoyance. The human sacrifices of all times and of all religions are the outcome of the sadomasochist clairvoyance. Those human sacrifices are living examples that show us what this type of sadomasochist clairvoyance is. So, the assassination of people on the altar for liturgical ritual purposes is nothing else than a barbaric sadomasochist clairvoyant custom. The Black Mass with human sacrifices was celebrated in many medieval castles during the 15th century. Marshal Gilles de Rais in Tifanges, France, had in his castle a church whose priest celebrated the Black Mass. Retz was accused of having assassinated 200 children in his Black Masses. Catherine de' Medici also celebrated Black Masses with the sacrifice of innocent children. The Witches' Sabbath with its Black Masses and its witchcraft were in rivalry with the priests of the Holy Office of the Catholic Inquisition in regards to the assassination of innocent children. This is what sadomasochist clairvoyance is, a criminal and terribly perverse type of clairvoyance. Therefore, we can become perfect clairvoyants only by dissolving the psychobiotypic I, which everybody carries inside. Thank you for listening.